Mark chapter 7, I want to go to a very familiar story for many people. At the 24th verse, it starts here talking about Jesus. This is in the New Revised Standard Version. From there, he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. Anybody ever felt like that? Like you trying to get away, you trying to get out of sight of people, and you go somewhere you think people are not going to know you, and then boom, you run into somebody you know. Yeah, he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him. And she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Verse 27, Jesus said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go, the demon has left your daughter." And when she went home, she found the child lying on the bed and the demon was gone. Ashe and amen. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I don't have a title for this message. So just take this journey with me as we walk through this. A few weeks ago, we released an episode of Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality with Candace Bimbo. Candace Bimbo is a public theologian. She is the author of Red Lip Theology. Every lady, I think, should read Red Lip Theology, and the men need to as well, to be perfectly honest. We can learn so much by listening to women's stories. So I can say that I was blessed by the book. But Candace came on, and the way we do it at Holy Smokes, we have a live virtual audience. Everybody jumps in. We start the stream. And the first 10 to 15 minutes, we're just chatting it up, casual conversation. Candace did not know this was the chatted up portion because she was dropping heat. Like she was preaching in the pre-show. I was like, "Candace, we ain't even started yet." She was like, "For real? I don't know why I thought we was already recording." And she was just going and just dropping all of these wonderful nuggets. One of the nuggets that she dropped in the pre-show I thought was impactful enough to share it on social media. She made a statement in the pre-show about how she, in her theology, is not committed to a sinless Savior. That she doesn't need Jesus to be sinless in order for her to want to follow his way. And we shared it, and before you know it, we're getting dissertation length comments to refute everything that she is saying. People start making their own separate posts to talk about what she is saying. People were calling her a half-baked, half-digested theologian. People were up in arms saying she was crazy. I watched it happen before my very eyes on social media over the past week or so. They just went at her because she said that, for me, Jesus doesn't need to be sinless. But everybody got so upset and so offended that they started to not only try to refute what she was saying, but started attacking her. And the problem with that, the reason we have situations like that is because many of us confuse doctrine with discipleship. In the words of my friend Timothy Carruthers, we confuse doctrine with discipleship. See, doctrine and discipleship are not the same thing. Yeah, because many people have been raised to defend the perfection of Jesus. That's their doctrine. Their doctrine says Jesus is perfect and you have to defend it at all costs. Discipleship opens us up not to defend the perfection of Jesus, but to follow the way of Jesus. There are two different things. They're two different things, because there's a whole lot of people who will defend the perfection of Jesus, but then they will write opinions about how we should pull back everybody's rights. And we have some people who are caught up in doctrine and don't even know about discipleship. Doctrine is where information is put into your head and then it's closed up. Discipleship opens up your mind to expand and imagine the possibilities. That's the difference. And people have gotten caught up in their doctrine of Jesus being perfect to the extent it causes them to attack somebody's character when they say, for me, Jesus doesn't have to be perfect. She didn't say, you shouldn't believe that Jesus is perfect. She said, I'm just making a decision for myself. I'm making a decision for my own beliefs that for me, I don't need a sinless savior. Based on the attacks that she experienced and based on the ruling that we saw yesterday, it appears to me that our society has a major issue with women making their own decisions. Tyranny told us last month Christianity has a consent problem. Our society has a consent problem. There is something dangerous to the social order if women have their own agency. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something dangerous about women having their agency and making their own decisions for themselves. And when we get caught up in doctrine over discipleship, it's really easy to write somebody off because they don't have the same doctrine that we have. We start questioning people's relationship with God because simply we got a different doctrine. When in reality, the perfection of Jesus, if it does not inspire you to live differently, then why does it matter? Why does the belief matter if it does not inspire you to love people more, to embrace people more, to include people, to engage in conversation when we have disagreements? Instead of attacking people's character, she just was talking about what she believed for herself. Just like women want to decide what they want to do with their own bodies. I don't know why that is so difficult to understand. I do not understand why it's so difficult to understand that until the thing that is inside of their body is no longer dependent on their body for survival, it is their choice to do what they want to do with their body. I don't get it, but people get caught up in their doctrine and completely miss discipleship. And here's my stance. I don't necessarily need Jesus to be sinless or sinful. It really does not matter to me. But if we could allow just for a moment that maybe Jesus had an imperfection or two, if we could just allow for that, since he is completely divine and completely human, can we allow for his humanity to possibly have some imperfections? Here's why I'm asking the question. Because there are some valuable life lessons that we can learn from Jesus's imperfections that we will never learn from his perfection. You can't learn some stuff if everything is perfect. If you always do everything right, there's some stuff you just not going to learn in life. And if we would just allow ourselves to read the story of Jesus for what it says, not what we were told about it, but just read it for what it says, there are some lessons that we can learn that we would never learn in Jesus's perfection. So when these conversations come up about this age-old debate about the perfection of Jesus, this is not some new conversation. Church folk been having this conversation for centuries. But if we allow for it, generally we go to this particular story. When we want to talk about, is there a possibility that maybe Jesus had some imperfections? Usually this is the story that comes up. And if you got a moment, I just want to walk through the story. I'm I'm about halfway done, to be perfectly honest. The story says that Jesus leaves one place and he goes to the region of Tyre. That's very important because Jesus has just come from doing ministry with his fellow Israelites. He goes into this place called Tyre where you don't find many Israelites. It's predominantly populated by a Gentile population. So Israelites and Gentiles really don't rock with each other. When Jesus wanted to get away and decompress, he got away from the Israelites and went to hang out with the Gentiles. That's another message for another day. So he goes to Tyre, and it says that he entered a house and he did not want anyone to know that he was there. He was trying to get away from the work. I don't know why exactly Jesus went to Tyre, but I can guarantee you it wasn't to do ministry. Because I just read the entire story of his time in Tyre. He didn't go to do ministry. He went to get away. You ever been like that where you going, like you tired, like I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit down. And then out of nowhere, somebody come asking you for something. And they don't know that you need to get away. They don't know that you need to sit down. They just coming to you like they normally would. But you so tired and your body is like, ugh, leave me alone. Like another day, I probably would have been good. But today, just give me some space. That's why I have sympathy for celebrities who are bombarded with people all day, everywhere they go. And then somebody gets angry with them because they don't want to be bothered while they're sitting there having dinner with their family. If you're getting bombarded every day, can we not have a human moment and say, let's leave me alone? Jesus goes because he wants to get away. But apparently some people in Tyre know about him, because some of them went into his region to see him do ministry, and they went back to Tyre and told everybody about it. So when he gets there, says he can't escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and found him. She's like, I don't care if he's hiding. I'm desperate. My daughter is sick. My daughter is in need. I don't care what people say. This might be life or death. So she pushes through. She gets to him and it says that she was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Here's what Jesus said to her. He said, let the children be fed first. He's talking about his fellow Israelites. He's talking about the people in his ethnic group. He's saying, let them be fed first. He said, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. He just called this woman a dog, y'all. There's no way to read around that. Jesus called a woman a dog. And if we want to get into context, because, whenever we had these conversations, but you got to understand the cultural context of what's going on. Well, let's talk about the cultural context of what's going on. Dog was an ethnic slur. That's why the writer points out that he's in a region full of Gentiles. That's why the writer points out that she was a Gentile of Syrophoenician order. So that when you get to this point where he calls her a dog, you can do the contextual clues to figure out he's calling her an ethnic slur. Now, here's the problem with doctrine over discipleship. The first time I preached this message, I was full of doctrine. I was full of the doctrine that told me before I ever read about Jesus that he's perfect. Before I ever read anything about him, they told me he's perfect. He can do no wrong. He makes no mistakes. There is no way he can do anything wrong. So when I went to the text full of my doctrine, I read how Jesus called a woman a dog for apparently no reason. And I was like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this, because this man just called this woman a dog, but he perfect. And I'm trying to figure out, how can you be perfect and call people ethnic slurs all willy-nilly? I just don't understand it. Like he says, I'm rocking with my Israelites. Y'all some dogs. Y'all get out of here. Y'all gotta wait. Myron says it this way: could it be that at this moment in Jesus's life, he is more committed to his culture than he is his call? Could it be that his culture is influencing in a way that it is blurring the lines of his call? Was he not sent to save the world? Why is it then that when he encounters this woman, he calls her a dog? So guess what I did? When I first read this and I was full of all of my doctrine, I said, okay, Christian, here we go. We got to make sense out of this. So I sat there and I started thinking about it, and I did all of these acrobatics in my head. I said, oh, okay. Because see, I start with the idea that Jesus is perfect. If that is my starting point, everything grows out from there. Everything has to grow from Jesus's perfection. So when I read it, I said, okay, that's what it is. So like, he divine and he human. So the divine part of him knew what was about to happen, which is why he said that, because he was trying to use her as an example so the disciples could see how he could bless people from other places. So in reality, he set this whole thing up. He knew it was going to happen. He knew how she was going to respond. I preached that. I preached that. And the crowd went wild. Because we were all full of the same doctrine that says, I got to read into this, the perfection of Jesus. But when I took that filter off, when I started to unlearn the stuff that had been force-fed to me, when I started to unlearn, I said, let me read this for what it says. Jesus is going to get away. He's been in ministry now for quite a while, nonstop. He needs to get away. He's tired. He tries to sneak into town. He needs to rest. And then out of nowhere, this woman that he doesn't know comes to him asking him for something. I would be frustrated too. Quite possibly, I might have snapped a little bit. So maybe there's a possibility Jesus just wasn't in a good space that day. I mean, is that possible if we take off the filters of Jesus having to be perfect? Could it be that he was just having a bad day? I mean, if we look at it that way, that's why I love the song "Jesus is Real to Me." Yeah, the humanity of Jesus makes Jesus real to me. The fact that he could be human enough in moments to maybe make a misstep and try to figure out how to correct it. That's what makes Jesus real to me. But that might not be it for you. If you need Jesus to be perfect, I'm not going to stop you from that. I'm just saying it helps me to get closer to Jesus. It helps me to feel more connected to Jesus. And there might be somebody else here who feels the same way that I feel, that when I can think of Jesus maybe having an imperfection or a blemish in his humanity, then it helps me to feel closer to him too. That's what I see here. He called her a dog. He called her a dog. But guess what she did? She said, okay, I'll be your dog. Yeah, if you need me to be a dog, if that's the space that you in, I'll be that. But guess what? Even if I'm a dog, you and I still live in the same house. So while you talking to me like I'm a dog, I still got a daughter that needs help. Anybody ever been there where you're not really feeling God, but you know you still need what God has? And even though you mad at God, even though you want to cuss God out, it's like, you know what? I still need what you got. So I'm going to press through how I feel right now. Yes, people are trying to take my rights, but I still need what you got. Yes, people are lying on me, but I still need what you got. Yes, I feel like you're allowing this stuff to happen to me, but I still need what you got. She said, I'll be your dog. But even the dogs get to eat the crumbs that fall off of the table. So what she's saying is, all of this work that you've been doing with your fellow Israelites, there's got to be some crumbs available for me right now. I shouldn't have to wait any further because you've been doing it already. So there got to be some crumbs available to come to me right now. Here it is. Here it is. The next thing Jesus says, he says, for saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. Here it is. Here is Message. Here is the lesson that we can learn from Jesus's imperfections that we would never learn from his perfection. Jesus shows us, he models us how to be accountable when we mess up. Yeah, think about that. Jesus models for us how to be accountable when we mess up. Even the scholars who write commentaries on this text, they say this was a derogatory term that he used towards her. But when he gets confronted, he says, ooh, let me rethink that. If we got to see Jesus as perfect, we never get to see Jesus take accountability for when he messes up. And maybe that's the reason a whole lot of Christians are so unaccountable. Could that be the reason why Christians don't have any accountability a lot of times? Autumn told us a story about growing up with her family. And I don't know if it was a Bible and Beyond or if it was Holy Smokes. Autumn told us how when she was growing up, her parents had a strict policy that they wouldn't argue in front of the kids. So anytime they experienced conflict between the two of them, they made sure they didn't do it in front of the kids. She said one time she saw them bubbling up, like they were having a conversation and it was beginning to escalate. She said her mom immediately stopped it, like, no, we're not going to do this here in front of the kids. And they went off somewhere privately and they handled the situation. They did it because they wanted to protect her from conflict. What she picked up from that was she became conflict avoidant because she learned by seeing how they moved that conflict is a bad thing and you should avoid it at all costs. They modeled conflict avoidance for her. Could it be that the reason people aren't accountable is because we've never shown them a Jesus who models accountability? How can we be accountable if it's never modeled for us? So we've been serving this idea of a perfect Jesus who never has to take accountability, and now Christianity at large is accountability avoidant. That's why we got these Christian Supreme Court justices who are making rules and legislation for people they're not accountable to. If 80% of the country says there's no need to overturn Roe versus Wade, who are they being accountable to when they make their decisions? Who is the SCOTUS being accountable to when they make their decisions? If 80% of the country, who are they being accountable to? But if all you got is a perfect Jesus who, when he calls somebody a derogatory term and he don't have to fess up for it, then it's easy. I ain't got to say sorry either. I ain't got to be accountable either. I don't have to change my behavior either. I just treat people any kind of way I want to because Jesus did it. And he perfect. So if he perfect, then I can do it. If we never have an opportunity to see Jesus take accountability for his actions, but we're told to follow the way of Jesus, how can we be accountable in our living if we're following his way and we tell everybody he doesn't have to be accountable? Here's the message. You cannot advocate for people that you are not accountable to. You cannot advocate for people that you are not accountable to. Advocacy without accountability is a display of arrogance. Because if you're advocating for people you're not accountable to, you're just lifting yourself up. How you gonna act on somebody else's behalf and not have a conversation with them about how they want you to act? Advocacy without accountability is a display of arrogance. Legislation without accountability is a display of corrupt leadership. We cannot, it's Power and Pride Month, right? We cannot advocate for people that we're not accountable to. Jesus models for us how to be accountable, because the closest thing that we're going to get to perfection in human form is somebody who takes accountability for when they mess up, because humanity is guaranteed to mess up. So the closest thing you're going to get to perfect is being accountable and saying, you know what? I messed up. I harmed you. I said the wrong thing. Let me straighten myself up, course correct, and go in the right direction. Advocacy without accountability is a display of arrogance. I cannot advocate for women if I'm not willing to be held accountable by women. I cannot advocate for the Q plus community if I'm not willing to be held accountable by the Q plus community. I, Christian Alexander Smith, a black man, cannot advocate for black people if I'm not accountable to us. All black people don't talk for all black people. Clarence Thomas ain't never spoke on my behalf. We should have listened to it, Anita, back in 91 to start with. I didn't realize I was living through history when that whole situation was going on. I didn't realize the implications of those hearings back in 91, but it's coming real clear today. We can't advocate for people we won't be accountable to. And one thing that I know that we can do in response to the events of this week is be accountable to each other and how we advocate for each other, that we show up for each other, that we hold space for each other, that we fight for each other. Here it is, and I'm done. Before Jesus encounters this woman in the book of Mark, there are 6 chapters of his story before he encounters this woman in chapter 7. Not one time in the first 6 chapters did Jesus ever refer to being called to the world. He never referred to being called to all nations. He has an encounter with this woman, and he basically says, I'm not called to you. She challenges him. This encounter with this woman course corrects his entire ministry, because before he met her, he never once said anything about the world. He never once said anything about all nations. But after he encountered her in Mark chapter 7, well, in Mark chapter 11, he said, my house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. And in Mark 12, he gives us the greatest commandment where he says, you love your neighbor as yourself. And by neighbor, he means fellow human. And then Mark chapter 13, he says, the good news must be proclaimed to all nations. And then when he signs off in Mark chapter 16, he tells his disciples, go to the world. All of this happened, as I see it, because of an encounter with a woman who was willing to hold him accountable. We might not get the gospel the same way if not for Jesus's encounter with this woman. I don't know for sure. I'm just going off of the context clues, because he never said anything about all nations before he met her. And then she challenged him to see her as a part of his call. And then after that, he said, yeah, I'm called to everybody. Let's go tell the world. Jesus's call came into clarity at the point of his accountability to this woman. Our advocacy for each other will go as far as our accountability. Our love for each other will go as far as our accountability. The community that we are building will go as far as our accountability. And if we need a model of what accountability looks like when you mess up, why not look to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith? Your career will go as far as your accountability. Your friendships will go as far as your accountability. Your relationships, romantic, platonic, will go as far as your accountability. That's why I believe Jesus is real. That's why. Because Jesus was real enough to take accountability, and I believe that's what Jesus is calling us to as we hold each other up. So here's what I'll say. The SCOTUS set us back about 5 decades yesterday. So in thinking about what would make me feel better, I thought about the songs that my elders may have sang 5 decades ago. What carried my elders through the times when things like this happened? And this is what came to me. Real, real, Jesus is real to me. Oh, yes, he gives me the victory. So many people doubt him. I can't live without him. That is why I love him so, because Jesus is real to me. In the morning, real, real, Jesus is real to me. Oh, yes, he gives me the victory. So many people doubt him. I can't live without him. That is why I love him so, because Jesus is real to me. Everybody say real. Come on. Yeah. Jesus. Oh, yes, he gives me the victory. So many people doubt him.